The year is 1632 and the wars of religion engulf Europe. Can you imagine it? A war so total everywhere you have ever known and everywhere you might have known is touched by it. It's taken friends and family members. Maybe it swallowed your village whole. Perhaps it even took you, conscripted by a king or an emperor or a pope you have never met. So when you seek an inn to stay for the night, why are you so surprised to find the war has arrived ahead of you? Hello, Dungeon Masters! This is your RPG Archivist, and no, your video is not malfunctioning. If you're familiar with my videos, you're used to a certain format. Well, somebody pointed out something, and I thought I couldn't do it. I did some testing, and guess what? I can now control the horizontal as well as the vertical. So, yay! Hopefully this will be considered slightly better quality. Sorry, I still have shaky cam. One of these days I'll get a stand or something. I don't know. But we're talking right now. No Rest for the Wicked, a scenario by Lamentations of the Flame Princess. Spoilers. I remembered to say it. You can place bets on that, whether or not I remember, huh? I remembered this time. So what is this scenario about? I call it a scenario and not an adventure. Basically what's going on is your players are going to have to stop at an inn eventually. And if you're like 5e players, are going to be all like, oh yeah, we're just going to stop here for a long rest. And then they're going to get suspicious because the NPCs in the inn are going to start talking to them. Yeah, it's going to be one of those. So, what is the scenario? I told you spoilers, so I'm just going to tell you right up. The guy that owns the inn is harboring a fugitive. I tell you what, let me give you the setup first. This is set in a historical period. In fact, in the back, I even read it off the back. This is 1632, actual Europe. It seems at some point, the writers for Lamentations of the Flame Princess, a lot of them started writing for real-world events, which seemed strange to me at first. But, because I'm like, how weird is that? I don't know. Not very. But this guy makes a point. What's the guy's name? J. Stuart Pate. If I'm reading that correctly. James Stuart Pate. He says, you can't have weird all the time or the weird stops being weird. And this is a good scenario to ease your players into the weird if they're not used to super weird. But let's face it, we're all gamers. Anybody that's played any kind of fantasy role-playing game, they've ran into weird at some point. But that's okay. This is a good little scenario. So again, you're in an inn. The innkeeper is harboring fugitives. And there is a Catholic army just down the road. And shenanigans happen. There's a nice, here's some artwork. This is very similar to the artwork I remember seeing in Deathfrost Doom. Keep flipping. War is hell. Hell is other people. Here we go. Here's the brief timeline. Then they've got an in-depth timeline. This is effectively a timeline of events that are going to happen. Now, these events can change depending on how your players react. This is just if your players do nothing. Now, here's the conundrum. The fugitive, who was a Protestant, was escaping the village, or he's deserted. He deserted. He deserted his army, and he burned down a village to escape. Not very nice. Here's the conundrum. He's got a family of 5. Yeah. And so does the innkeeper. The innkeeper also has kids. So if they're found out, what's going to happen is bad things. All the adults are going to be captured, questioned, and killed, and the kids sent off to an orphanage. Now it's up to the players to figure out what exactly is going on, and whether or not they actually want to do something. If they're particularly mercenary, they could get the reward on the guy and get to watch those kids get taken off to the orphanage and the adults killed. So it's an interesting scenario. I call it a scenario because it's like something that could be inserted into an ongoing campaign at any time. Now, I've got to give you the details of the timeline. Well, let's just say that there are spies and shenanigans and a rude awakening. If you are a game master and you're doing your job right, your players should get to know the Herzogs, the people that own the inn, pretty well, and get to know somewhat the Steiners. This is the refugee family. And of course you have a cast of characters. It is a good scenario. I like it. For $14.99, I feel like I got my money's worth. Here is the map. You could insert this map into any fantasy game. You really could. You could actually insert this scenario into any fantasy setting. It doesn't have to be Protestants and Catholics warring. It could be any two kingdoms, any two large factions, maybe a couple of city-states that have been warring for a very, very, very long time. You will, of course, have to make adjustments. There is nothing supernatural whatsoever in this adventure, which is kind of weird for Lamentations of the Flame Prince's weird fantasy role-playing. But it's a good scenario, and I like it. And as I thought, this was going to be a quick video. It's a short adventure. Not gonna lie, read-only review. Yeah, if this strikes your fancy, you think it's interesting, by all means, go get it. Wouldn't take too much to adjust it to 5th edition or any OSR product. Be a little bit harder for 5th edition. I'd go with any kind of OSR, or even better, Lamentations of the Flame Princess, the game it was written for. So, I'm just going to call it. This is your RPG Archivist, and see ya!